there's four different metaphors for Bitcoin. There's digital capital, there's digital property. The third important metaphor is it's a digital energy network. And the AI economy is going to be built on digital energy by moving energy, money at the speed of light, at the speed of a computer. It's a $100 trillion economy. There is one digital energy network. If you own it, if you control it, you control and participate in that $100 trillion economy. If you don't, you're locked out of the economy. The AIs are going to think 1,000,000 times a second, and they're going to want to trade 1,000,000 times a second with each other. You can't do it without a digital monetary network, and that'll be built on Bitcoin as the settlement network. So understood as digital capital, Bitcoin is enriching the corporations and the government itself, depending upon how much Bitcoin those entities own.
Michael Saylor, the executive chairman of strategy, is the only person who is aware that Bitcoin has already cemented its position as the most popular digital commodity in the world. Saylor, who has $33 billion invested in Bitcoin, is steadfast in his conviction that it is a unique digital asset that surpasses all others. He believes that this is an indisputable reality that has been influenced by market forces and cannot be disputed. The basic reality remains unchanged even if additional decentralized assets appear. Bitcoin has already attracted global interest and amassed more than $1 trillion in committed money. Bitcoin is the only thing that matters. The market has spoken. Remember to click the subscribe button and enable notifications to ensure that you never miss our most recent analysis. Thank you and enjoy the video.
I think there's only one universally acknowledged digital commodity in the world, right? There's only one. There's Bitcoin. I've said that, right? There is no second best. I've implied that and said that, and I've spent $33 billion based on that. So yeah, it was my view 4.5 years ago. There's one digital commodity. But Christine, there's a more important point here. Even if there was a second, third, and fourth, like let's take the fork wars, Bitcoin Cash, Bitcoin Satoshi Vision. Even if you fork Bitcoin and you maintain that's a commodity, they're all going to zero if the use case is store of value or cap or money, right? Because if you were to fork Bitcoin and claim it's decentralized, the free market is going to pick the strongest network and it's going to be monetized and everything else is going to zero. So it doesn't matter from a practical point of view. My position is not that you couldn't theoretically create another digital commodity. And the companies in the United States, like my company, they're capitalizing on Bitcoin. They're going to be worth $20 to $40 trillion just on their Bitcoin assets if they continue to capitalize. So understood as digital capital, Bitcoin is enriching the corporations and the government itself, depending upon how much Bitcoin those entities own. That's the first metaphor. The second metaphor is Bitcoin is digital property. If you think of it as gold or cheese, nobody rents their cheese or mortgages their cheese. But when you think of it as owning 100 acres in Manhattan, if your family owned 100 acres of Manhattan 100 years ago and you owned it this year, and I asked you, what's your family doing with it? How are you going to pay your bills? You wouldn't say, well, we're going to sell our property in Manhattan. You would say, we're going to rent it, we're going to develop a building on it, or we're going to borrow against it, we're going to finance it. And so you would generate billions and billions of dollars off of 100 acres of real estate in Manhattan without ever selling it. It's property. And so Bitcoin as property means you will be able to rent it, finance it, or build businesses on top of it in the cyber economy. That would be worth $10 trillion to the United States in 2045 each year, right? We could generate $10 trillion off of the digital property that the United States buys in the strategic Bitcoin reserve.
National debt?
You wouldn't be a national debt. You would basically flip from being a net debtor to a net creditor, and you would generate yield. So that's a very powerful idea. Just like the company that owns $100 billion worth of real estate generates billions and billions of dollars of rental income a year. Or if I have $100 billion of capital, I can generate $5 billion a year just loaning the capital out. I think the most important thing said in this industry in 4 years was said Friday night, and I think it missed a lot of people's attention. I don't think people really realize what happened. David Sachs, the crypto czar, went on the All In podcast. And on the All In podcast, he said, I'm unequivocally that the US government only recognizes one crypto asset as being decentralized. So what Sachs said was Bitcoin is a decentralized asset, a store of value. That's why it's in the strategic Bitcoin reserve. It's the only one. And so what you had was a member of cabinet responsible for digital assets policy, in essence, providing very clear guidance that Bitcoin is a digital commodity, an asset without an issuer. And that's the policy of the United States and the President of the United States.
Saylor compares owning Bitcoin to owning expensive Manhattan real estate that is used for development, rental, and collateral purposes rather than for sale. He thinks that by incorporating Bitcoin into the financial system rather than selling it, the United States might make trillions of dollars annually if it treats it like digital property. Saylor said this strategy may make the United States a net creditor instead of a net debtor. Since Bitcoin is the only real digital asset due to its decentralized nature, security, and market dominance, attempts to imitate it have failed. The demand, confidence, and financial flows are firmly anchored in the Bitcoin network, despite the fact that other nations may attempt to introduce their own digital currencies. Saylor thinks that Bitcoin is already unstoppable, and that the United States may set the standard if it moves swiftly, influencing both allies and enemies. Now, let's dive back and hear what he has to say.
There's 4 different metaphors for Bitcoin. There's digital capital, there's digital property. The third important metaphor is it's a digital energy network. And the AI economy is going to be built on digital energy by moving energy, money at the speed of light, at the speed of a computer. It's a $100 trillion economy. There is one digital energy network. If you own it, if you control it, you control and participate in that $100 trillion economy. If you don't, you're locked out of the economy. The AIs are going to think 1,000,000 times a second, and they're going to want to trade 1,000,000 times a second with each other. You can't do it without a digital monetary network, and that'll be built on Bitcoin as a settlement network. So if the entire future of the banking system and the digital commerce system and the AI economy, it's all going to be based upon digital money, digital energy, digital capital. And so that's important. And then the fourth metaphor is it's a digital defense system, because the measure of power in cyberspace is the exahash. If you want to create a system that can't be corrupted, censored, tampered with, or hacked by an AI or by another computer, you need raw power combined with the power of cryptography, a wall of digital energy or encrypted energy. And so if I wanted to send $10 billion into a war zone, the only way to do it is with Bitcoin. If I want to lock down a cyber system against cyber attack, where I want to authenticate it and make it tamper-proof, what you want is public-private key cryptography embedded into the Bitcoin blockchain, backed by 20 gigawatts of electricity, 850 exahash. No one can crack that, right? And we have a situation today where Satoshi could prove to you in 1 second that they are in possession of $80 billion worth of capital by simply signing a message with their private key. That has profound cybersecurity implications for the country. So when you put them all together, right, digital capital, digital property, digital, energy, and digital defense, what you can see is that you either going to own cyberspace, and owning cyberspace is owning the asset and controlling the network, controlling cyberspace, or your enemy does. And if you lose control of your airspace, you get bombed back to the Stone Age in 1 week. You lose the country. If you lose control of the sea lanes, you lose the country. If you lose control of cyberspace, not only can you not send money between New York and Tokyo, you can't send money between New York and Chicago. You can't even send money between your computer and the computer in the same room next to you in a secure fashion. So in this case, the reason this is important to U.S. digital supremacy is the future economy is digital intelligence, and it's going to need to move digital energy protected by digital power in order to engage in digital commerce. And Bitcoin is that digital energy network, and that's why it's in the best interest of the U.S. to own it. But Bitcoin is already the winner. it's reached escape velocity. And if the US government begins to acquire it aggressively, not only are they a beneficiary, but they will force every other country on earth to adopt Bitcoin as the global capital.
The importance of Bitcoin in the contemporary economy is explained by Michael Saylor, using 4 major metaphors, each of which highlights a distinct facet of its worth. He begins by referring to Bitcoin as digital capital, presenting it as an asset that retains and stores value in a manner similar to that of real capital in the conventional economy. Second, he views Bitcoin as digital property that should be held, developed, and used to generate long-term wealth rather than being sold. Digital energy in the form of Bitcoin is the third metaphor. In his ideal future, Bitcoin will serve as the foundation of an AI-powered economy worth $100 trillion, allowing money and energy to flow at the speed of light. The entities that own and control this digital energy network will have a stake in the quickly expanding global economy, and it will serve as the basis for digital trade. Finally, Saylor characterizes Bitcoin as a method of digital protection. This idea relates to how Bitcoin uses cryptography and the enormous processing capacity of the Bitcoin network to defend against cyber threats and attacks, providing unparalleled security for data and transactions. According to Saylor, Bitcoin is necessary for future cyberspace management. Owning and controlling Bitcoin, the foundation of digital energy and monetary transactions, will define a nation's ability to protect its digital future, much like control over sea lanes or airspace dictates geopolitical strength. He highlights that by integrating Bitcoin into its core economy, the United States has a rare chance to take advantage of this digital dominance. And as always, happy investing.